Digable Planets, Brooklyn, New York, active since 1987. In the early 90s, hip-hop was expanding in every direction. On one hand, gangsta rap was dominating the streets and Billboard charts. On the other, conscious and alternative groups were carving out their own lane, merging jazz, funk, and Afrocentric philosophies with rap. Somewhere in between came a Brooklyn-based trio called Digable Planets, Butterfly, Doodlebug, and Ladybug Mecca, whose sound was so cool, smooth, and different, they seemed like the future. Their 1993 debut, Reachin, A New Refutation of Time and Space, was everything its title suggested. Abstract, jazzy, intelligent, yet still accessible enough to climb to number 15 on the Billboard 200. Its lead single, Rebirth of Slick, aka Cool Like That, peaked at number 15 on the Billboard Hot 100, topped the rap chart, went gold, and even earned them a Grammy for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group. For a brief moment, Digable Planets weren't just underground heroes, they were mainstream stars. But almost as quickly as they arrived, their rise collapsed. Their follow-up album, Blowout Comb, dropped just a year later in 1994, and though musically dense and politically sharper than their debut, it peaked at number 32 on the Billboard 200 and quickly fell off the charts. Critics hailed it as bold, layered, and years ahead of its time, but the commercial audience that embraced Rebirth of Slick didn't follow. By early 1995, the group disbanded, citing creative differences and the pressures of industry politics, leaving behind the image of a trio that seemed destined for more. Unlike peers such as A Tribe Called Quest or De La Soul, who built long-term brands from similar blueprints, Digable Planets became more of a one-album wonder, remembered primarily for a single hit, not a sustained movement. Their jazz rap aesthetic was beautiful and innovative, but in a hip-hop world shifting toward harder edges, glossy radio singles, and superstar personalities, their cosmic approach didn't translate into staying power. Today, their story stands as a reminder of how fragile momentum can be in music. Success requires more than critical acclaim or even Grammy wins. It requires timing, audience connection, label support, and a bit of luck. Digable Planets had the talent, originality, and vision, but their window closed before they could fully grow. Still, their influence remains clear in the later resurgence of jazz rap aesthetics and the way future artists picked up threads of what the Planets left behind. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Digable Planets is a hip-hop trio originally formed in Brooklyn, New York, made up of Ishmael Butterfly Butler from Seattle, Craig Doodlebug Irving from Philadelphia, and Marianne Ladybug Mecca Vieira from Silver Spring, Maryland. Butler connected with Irving while studying on the East Coast and later brought in Vieira, completing a lineup that shared a deep love for jazz records, Afrocentric ideas, and pushing rap into new experimental territory. In '93, they released their debut album, Reachin, A New Refutation of Time and Space through Pendulum/Electro Records. Powered by jazzy samples and laid-back poetic verses, the album resonated with fans seeking a smoother alternative to gangsta rap, peaking at number 15 on the Billboard 200. Its lead single, Rebirth of Slick, reached number 15 on the Hot 100, topped the rap chart, went gold, and earned the group a Grammy, positioning them as leaders of hip-hop's alternative wave. Stunt number 1, the pressure of following up a classic. Digable Planets' '93 debut, Reachin, A New Refutation of Time and Space, put them on the map in a way few new artists experience. It wasn't just an instant cool factor of Rebirth of Slick or the Grammy win that followed, it was that they seemed to embody a whole new direction for hip-hop, fusing jazz samples with cosmic philosophy and laid-back delivery. But the same qualities that made them fresh also created a burden. A debut that iconic leaves little room for error, and audiences expected more of the same magic the second time around. Their '94 follow-up, Blowout Comb, showed the group wasn't interested in repeating themselves. Instead of doubling down on the accessible cool that had made them famous, they went deeper into politically charged themes, heavy Pan-African symbolism, and layered jazz compositions that demanded patience and study. Critics admired the ambition, but casual listeners didn't stick around and moved on to more easily digestible artists. The album peaked at number 32 on the Billboard 200 and quickly faded, producing no mainstream singles. Part of the problem wasn't the music itself, but the environment it entered. Hip-hop in '94 was exploding commercially with projects like Nas's Illmatic, the Notorious B.I.G.'s Ready to Die, and Outkast's Southern playlistic Cadillac music commanding attention. These albums blended artistry with grit, radio appeal, and memorable personas, while Digable Planets' subdued and intellectual approach seemed distant from what was dominating the culture. What could have been their moment to solidify a brand instead exposed the limits of their audience reach. Blowout Comb would be later remembered as a hidden gem, but in real time its commercial drop-off created the first major stunt in Digable Planets' growth, leaving them celebrated by critics yet sidelined in the mainstream conversation. Stunt number 2, creative differences and industry struggles. The commercial disappointment of Blowout Comb didn't just cool Digable Planets' momentum, it magnified cracks within the group. Butterfly, Doodlebug, and Ladybug Mecca had meshed beautifully on Reachin, but their long-term visions weren't always aligned. Butterfly, the group's primary writer and producer, pushed toward heavier political messaging and layered experimentation. Doodlebug and Ladybug Mecca, though equally important, weren't always on the same page about how far to lean in that direction. Without clear agreement, what once felt like effortless chemistry began to fracture and lose the harmony that made their debut feel so groundbreaking. Meanwhile, their label situation worsened. Signed to Pendulum Records under Elektra, the Planets were never an easy marketing fit. They weren't chasing radio singles or crossover club hits, and that made it hard for a label to package them in an industry shifting rapidly toward mainstream appeal. After Blowout Comb failed to produce charting singles, Pendulum offered little sustained push, and soon after, the label itself collapsed under financial strain. For Digable Planets, that meant being left without strong industry backing just as they needed it most, compounding the uncertainty already brewing within the trio. By early 1995, the pressure proved too heavy. The group disbanded quietly without a farewell release or final tour, leaving fans puzzled at how quickly their moment ended. Unlike A Tribe Called Quest or De La Soul, who weathered industry storms long enough to build lasting legacies, Digable Planets' internal differences and shaky label support cut their rise short before it could fully blossom. Although they eventually reunited for brief tours in the mid-2000s and again in the 2010s, those moments were more about nostalgia than continuation. The truth is, Digable Planets' prime ended before it truly began, and their inability to stay united during their breakthrough years stands as a second clear stunt in their growth. Stunt number 3, no charismatic frontman. For all Digable Planets' innovation and musical talent, one of their biggest setbacks was something less about sound and more about image. They never had a clear, charismatic frontman. In hip-hop, movements are often carried not just by the music, but by personality. Tribe Called Quest had Q-Tip, Public Enemy had Chuck D and Flavor Flav, De La Soul had Postanos and Dave, and later the Fugees would rise largely on the shoulders of Lauryn Hill and Wyclef Jean. Each of those groups offered someone fans and media could latch onto, whether to champion or criticize. Digable Planets, by contrast, were three introverts whose voices blended into the music rather than standing out above it. Butterfly may have been the creative leader, but he wasn't a magnetic figure who drew headlines or carried interviews. Doodlebug and Ladybug Mecca had talent and presence, yet they too preferred to exist inside the group's collective identity rather than project themselves as stars. As a result, their movement had no mouthpiece. This mattered most with the release of Blowout Comb. The album was dense, layered, and politically sharp, but there was no single voice translating its meanings to a wider audience and pushing their proposed agendas. Instead, casual fans were left confused by the sudden shift from the playful cool of Rebirth of Slick to the heavy black liberation themes of the follow-up. Without a fire brand or polarizing figure to simply give people a reason to care beyond the music, the group felt distant, almost faceless. In an era where hip-hop personalities were becoming larger than life, Digable Planets' collective, subdued approach became a liability. Their lack of a clear frontman or defining star presence was more than a quirk, it was a major stunt in their growth. All in all, Digable Planets were a group that seemed destined for more than one shining moment. They had the creativity, the originality, and the credibility to carve out a long-term lane in hip-hop, but momentum collapsed quickly after their debut, leaving them remembered for a single hit rather than a sustained catalog. The pressure of following up a Grammy-winning album, internal creative differences mixed with poor label support, and the absence of a true frontman all combined to shorten their run before it could flourish. Still, their influence endures. Blowout Comb is now celebrated as a visionary record. Their aesthetic helped keep jazz rap alive, and their style continues to echo in artists who prize experimentation and mood over convention. Digable Planets may not have grown into the giants they hinted at, but the seeds they planted never stopped resonating. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, their growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.